And it sounds cliche, but it's really true. Don't give up on yourself. And most importantly, if it's true and you truly believe that you're not going to give up on yourself, make sure your actions back it up.
But you literally have the American dream.
God's on my side, and
Yeah.
if I devote myself into this and I water these seeds every single day, eventually something might come from it.
Just chased after it with all your heart and put the work and effort in to essentially achieving that thing.
Today's sponsor is America First Advertising. Looking to boost your business's visibility? Meet America First Advertising, your go-to solution for digital signage and space. With networks spanning from Baton Rouge to Mississippi, they offer 25 screens in each network. Those locations in high-traffic venues like Walmart, Subway, doctor's offices, restaurants, and gyms. So you can imagine your ad being seen over 1,350 times in a single week. Ready to start your advertising? You can visit americafirstadvertising.com, or you can give them a call at 985-615-2680. America Advertising, where your business comes first. I would definitely recommend using these guys. Their screens are literally all over. I can't go anywhere without seeing a screen. So it's highly likely if you're sitting at a restaurant for 30 minutes to an hour, you're gonna see your ad. If you're interested, americafirstadvertising.com, or you can give them a call at 985-615-2680.
No, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on, and I really wanted to go over your story in real estate because a lot of people know that there's money in real estate, but many they don't really have a story like you do because
Mm-hmm.
they usually get into it and they stay local, but with you pretty much you put all your eggs in one basket. But no, in the podcast, I wanted to really just tell your story, just because I think it's unique and you're doing really well for yourself. And to me, even though it's been 5 years, you're really just still getting started.
Well, thanks for having me. I feel like I'm super excited to be here, and most importantly, I'm super excited to do this with you. I feel like you and I met in the beginning of all of it, but yeah, it's crazy to think that right around that time, I always talked about real estate, and fast forward, what, 6 years later down the road, it's like living everything that we talked about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, our relationship was based off of many things, but one of those things was around business, and you always
Yeah.
want to be around like-minded people,
Yes.
and in order to grow.
Yeah.
So one of those things you did always constantly talk about was getting your real estate license. It's what you
Yes.
thought of. You talked about like day and night. Anytime I had messaged you or called you or talked to you, Kevin was reading a book about real estate.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But you didn't start that way. You actually started in car sales. So I wanted to essentially ask you or get you to start with how you got started as in real estate, but as a car salesman.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great question. So, um, I'm gonna give a little backstory to the car salesman part of the story because I feel like that little backdrop will set up the car sales part of the story much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, originally when I got into real estate, my goal was always to start generating revenue in real estate, in the industry in general. It didn't have to be necessarily through sales or buying or selling real estate. I just wanted to be part of an environment where I could be surrounded by real estate people, and hopefully within that environment, I would grow into that part of myself, right? And at the time, I remember Southeastern University where we met. They had the job fairs. It was a job fair, right, where
Hmm.
all these companies
Yeah.
come, set up booths, and I get to try to get people to come in and inquire. And I remember when we went to the I guess the job fair, I saw a booth at the time, and the booth stood out to me because the booth was a real estate company. The company at the time was Keller Williams, and I had just read one of Gary Keller's book. Gary Keller is the owner of Keller Williams, which is one of the number one largest brokerage in the entire world, right?
Yeah, they're
So,
huge.
of course, I had just read their book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which really, the book is just, it talks about mindset, which is all about having the right perspective when you step into wanting to become, I guess, a successful real estate agent. And then the other half of the book actually talks about the how. How do you do it? Who are the people that you need in place? What are the platforms you need in place to make it happen, right?
I do want to ask you before you keep going to get
Yeah.
into being a car salesman to then get into real estate. What drove you to read the book? Because a lot of people want to get in real estate mainly because they want to make more money and they know there's money in real estate. And it is a point for you to want to make more money and to grow. But did you like find an excitement and almost a sense of purpose while following this path?
I think I know what you're asking me, and I'll answer it, and you'll let me know if I answered your question along the way. So, I didn't automatically jump into the millionaire real estate agent. A lot of the books that I was reading at that phase in my life when I was in college and I was studying, psychology and business, I was just reading books like Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad Poor Dad, The Four Quadrants of an Investor, As a Man Thinketh. There's so many. The list goes on. But as I was reading a lot of those books, a common denominator that I always found in every book I read was real estate. Anybody who's had success, anybody who is successful, what I found was that they all were involved in real estate in one way or another. They all were involved in it differently than others, but nonetheless, they were all in the industry. And the reason why the millionaire real estate agent stood out to me at the time was because, well, the title. I mean, millionaire real estate agent. You can't avoid that title. If that's what the title is, and that's who you're trying to become, it was just like a perfect connection. As I read the book, I did get excitement. Well, to me, my road to, I guess, getting out of the rat race, right? My not necessarily poverty, but I guess to get out of the limited mindset. I always felt like real estate. When I read that book, I feel like it provided a clear path. It's like, yeah, it's cool. We all have these hopes and dreams. We all want to be married. We all want to be successful. We all want to own a business and build a business. That's great. It's beautiful to have those aspirations and to have the hunger to go chase after it. But a lot of times, and I feel like this is where people struggle, a lot of times if you don't have the clarity to get there, it's very difficult to pursue an emotion. Because emotions are great. They come and go. But if you don't have a path or a 1, 2, 3 step on how to get there, you might never achieve it, right? And I felt like the real estate agent, the millionaire real estate agent, this book written by Gary Keller, took all this aspiration, all this motivation, all this hunger that I had, and finally provided a path to put all those emotions into action and move towards it. I mean, succeeding was never a guarantee, but I mean, if I started moving towards the right direction with a little bit of faith and belief that, God's on my side, and if I devote myself into this and I water these seed every single day, eventually something might come from it. And that's all I had. I just had, go ahead.
You absolutely nailed that question. So my point of it was your purpose for doing it, and your purpose was to really just better yourself. Because
Yeah.
not everyone, like you said, knows an exact direction, but they do know what better is, and
Mm-hmm.
better points you in the right direction. So in seeking the pursuit of just bettering yourself, you found the thing that interested you, the thing that would then get you out of poverty and get you out of the so-called rat race to then improve your life. And you now found a vision and a purpose and a path. And once you know the way
Yes.
broadly, you see it in everything.
Yeah.
You saw
Exactly.
the real estate appear in so many different ways.
Yep.
But that was my point, was just to see how you even got directed into
Mm-hmm.
this point,
Mm-hmm.
because many people just see dollar signs and say that's what I got to do, but
Right.
it wasn't exactly like that.
Right. Right. Yeah. You nailed it. You nailed it right on the head. And don't get me wrong. I always, even from then, I always saw real estate as a tool or as a vehicle to get to where I needed to be in life. Right.
Mhm.
Because you're right. I mean, riches or success and fame, all that stuff is, it comes and goes. It's not real, right? But if real estate can provide a career or a life where money isn't an object anymore, and now I can actually have the freedom to think and actually go do the things that I want to do, I feel like that is what kept me to move forward.
So I want to get to you now becoming a car salesman to kind of get to your story,
Mm-hmm.
really, on how you got going.
So back to where we were, as far as the job fair, right? At the
Mhm.
time, I saw a real estate booth, and the reason why I brought up the Millionaire Real Estate Agent is because I saw that book on the stand of the booth. So at the time, I had just finished reading the book. I was so consumed about learning about real estate. So when I stepped into this job fair and I saw a real estate booth with the book that I just read sitting on it, I felt like I was called into that table. I felt like God couldn't have prepared a more solid path on that day. And long story short, I talked to the lady, and she ended up hiring me. At the time, she was looking for real estate salespeople, and I told her that I was in the process of getting my real estate license. When I spoke to her, the thing is, the Louisiana real estate license exam is extremely difficult because they make you take two exams, national and state, because Louisiana still follows the Napoleon Code. So there's still a lot of French law that's unique that only exists in Louisiana. So at the time, to be honest, I had already failed the state exam twice. So when I came up to her and she asked me, I'm really looking for salespeople, I was honest. And I said, look, I'm still trying to pass that thing. But I just want to learn. If you need someone to come in here and sweep your floors or take out your trash once a week, I'll do it. You don't have to pay me. I just want to learn from you. And that's how I left the meeting. We left it at that. And literally 2 days later, she calls me up and says, Kevin, I've actually been looking for someone to work my front desk, and I'd love the chance for you to interview you for the role. Long story short, I ended up getting the position as a front desk for that real estate team, and I worked with them. And this was all in Covington, Louisiana. And I worked with them for about 8 months. Within that 8 month period, of course, I had already failed my state exam twice, so I was very hesitant about going another time because, many people fail the real estate exam multiple times. I guess one thing that I've noticed is that just don't give up. Keep trying and taking it as many times as you can until you pass it, which is what finally happened. As I was working in the real estate group and I started understood the industry more, I felt more prepared to take the state exam. And finally, I passed it. I passed the state exam after, 3 attempts and after working for this real estate group for 6 to 7 months. And at the time, I basically approached the team owner, and, I told her, look, I've been working for you about 8 months. You initially wanted to talk to me about becoming a salesperson, and I feel like now I am in a position to pursue that. Why wouldn't she hire me? I've been with her for a long time. I mean, I just got
You're
the
trusted.
exam. I mean, how it just made sense to me. Anyways, at the time, she made me take a personality exam. And unfortunately, with the personality exam that Keller Williams offered at the time, I'm sure it's changed, they really put people into 4 categories. You're not one specific type of personality all the time, but there is one dominant that you lead most of your day with, right? And then all the other ones kind of show themselves depending on your situation. Nonetheless, the 4 basically personalities are someone who's very social, like think about them like a cheerleader, super social, wants to talk to everybody, wants to be noticed. That's usually your real estate agents because real estate agents have to be social, have to go out there and do business. That's one. The second one is more like people that prefer stability. These are more like your mothers. They want to make sure that everyone's getting fed every day, that their checks on the mail every week. They like comfort. They don't like inconsistency. They like knowing what's going to happen the next day. The third person is your analytical people, people that kind of like your engineers, or your IT techs, people that got to know how everything works and why and everything that could possibly be involved in something complex, your analytical types. And then you have your other one. Your fourth one are people that are very direct. These are people that are extremely impatient. If they ask you for something, they want it yesterday. They don't want to wait 5 minutes for you to get up and do it. They're very direct, on the point. They don't care about your feelings. They tell you how it is, right? So the reason why I guess she took that personality exam is because I guess it guided her in determining whether I was a good fit for a agent or not, right? Anyways, long story short, when I took the exam, I actually fell under analytical and stability personality, which means I fell under the complete opposite of what a real estate agent should be. A real estate agent should be someone who's direct, straight to the point, but also someone social. I get it. It makes sense. If you're going out looking for business, that's how you got to be. So imagine my personality exam was someone who's extremely stable, likes consistency, and just likes details, and that's it. So because
Yeah,
that's
you were great for the front desk.
exactly, which makes sense why I got that role. But nonetheless, anyways, because of that exam, because of the results of those exams, she basically kind of said, "Well, Kevin, as much as I want you as a salesperson, you have a lot of growing to do. So if anything, I'll probably have you go door knocking, or I'll give you a list of people you can call and just call them 8 hours a day, and just tell me when you find someone that's looking to sell or buy." And in my mind, it's like, all right, I'm gonna give her the benefit of the doubt. We all got to start somewhere, right? So I started doing all those things, and I did those things for about 3 months, and it still felt like I was being capped. I felt like I wasn't being allowed to grow past that. And this is where the car situation opened up, because as I worked for this team, I met another like-minded person. We thought the same, we looked at business the same, and that person basically said, "Kevin, if you're already licensed and you feel like she's not giving you the opportunity to just become who you want to be, why don't you just go out and do it yourself?" And I thought to myself, well, yeah, I mean, that's easier said than done. Why not, right? But I didn't have the money. I still worked paycheck to paycheck. I still was trying to figure out how to pay my bills at the time.
Yeah,
So for me to just
living with multiple people, and.
yeah, so for me to just jump ship like that, yeah, it's great, but how long would that have taken? So, anyways, he's like, "Listen, don't worry about it. Let me hook you up. Let me hook you up with a job selling cars. If you go there, you should be able to save up enough money so you can do what you got to do, right?" And luckily, I had this person in my life that kind of pushed me to go out and do the thing that I guess sometimes everybody just needs that push. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if you don't mind me asking, so it's basically been a year now, and you failed twice. You've worked for this company at the front desk, just trying to learn. You feel like you're slowly taking steps, and inch by inch you make a mile. So you're starting to become successful in like realizing your end goal of real estate, only to be knocked back again and
Yeah,
again and again. So by the time this car salesman job comes up, you're like, I mean, yeah, anything's better than what I'm doing right now instead of being stifled, right?
right.
But did you have any feelings of the idea of being like a shady car salesman? Because they aren't always
So
seen, and that's not something that I would love to do.
yeah, yeah. So to be honest, I was at that moment in my life, I was 20. I was very naive. I didn't know much about the world. And I feel like because I was very naive, I just always felt like everyone wanted the best for you. I guess I still had a very childish mindset that when I thought about
What
car
are, what are you
salesman, I
talking
didn't think
about?
about,
People. So what are you talking about? People do want the best for
yeah. So
you.
when I thought about a car salesman job, I never thought about it in a negative tone because I never thought of it as a permanent thing. I always
Mhm.
just thought of it as a stepping stone to where I really want to be in life. So when I thought about a car salesman job, I always thought, okay, for the time being, for the season in my life, honestly, that's probably the best type of job I'm going to get where I don't have a ceiling in my income, right? Because I could go work anywhere, but anywhere I go, chances are you're capped at how much you can make for that year, right? So, car salesman, I felt like it gave me that opportunity to still not have a ceiling and let my income be determined by my output, right? So, it's interesting because at the time that I was offered to go into selling cars, the team that I was working in, their competitor. They're honestly the only other team in that city that was doing better than they were. Their competitor calls me up and offers me a job for their team. So at that moment in my life, I thought, oh, I got this opportunity to go sell cars, or I got my current boss's competitor asking me for a job, I felt like, oh, maybe I should go work for the competitor. It's still real estate, and it might be a, sent from God.
Who was the competitor?
It was a different team. They were both under the same brokerages, but they were just different teams within that brokerage.
Gotcha.
Right? So I don't know. To this day, I have no idea how they got my contact information. I doubt that my boss at the time gave it to them. It wouldn't make sense because when I went in for that interview, they were hiring me for the same exact job I was already doing for her. And I told them at the time, I was like, look, to be honest, I'm a loyal person. I would feel like I'm cheating if I'm going to leave my current job to come do the same exact stuff with you guys. Like, I told them the only way that I would heavily consider joining your team is if you actually put me on a path to become an agent. If your goal isn't for me to become that, then I can't take the job. Long story short, I didn't end up taking that job. I went back to my boss and I said, look, your competitor called me. Your competitor not only called me, he's asking me to do what you're offering me to do, but they at least told me that if I keep this up and I hit certain numbers for a certain amount of time, that they'll eventually put me on a path to become an agent. And basically she said, well, if you think that's the right thing to do, go do it. She didn't try to keep me. She didn't try to give me an opportunity to keep going at all. She just said, well, if that's what you think. And in that moment, that's when I realized, you know what? She doesn't really care. And the other guy is trying to tell me that eventually he'll put me on the path to an agent, but at the same time, I don't trust him. I don't know him. I haven't worked for him for a year for me to just take his word for it. It just didn't seem right. And that's when the idea of selling cars started to become more valuable, because at least I knew if I go and sell cars and I make enough money and I step out of it, I don't have to rely on that person or that person to give me a path. I can just rely on myself. And that alone brought a sense of security and comfort, because I don't trust them, but I trust myself. And not only do I trust myself, I also believe that if I do what I'm supposed to and I do the right thing and I go out and put all this energy consistently into the world, I always believe that God would give me what I deserve. And even that doesn't sound right, but I always knew that God wouldn't leave me hanging. I always knew that
Yeah.
I'll reap what I'll sow.
Almost as I may not deserve it, but if I keep working at it, he's always there for me.
Exactly. And that was the faith that I had in me that made me say, you know what? Screw that job. Screw that opportunity. I'm going to go sell cars. Now, granted, when I finally stepped into the car sales industry, I hadn't sold anything in my life. The only jobs that I had had up to that point in time was push carts at Walmart. I helped my family in their cleaning business, and I worked for an accountant for like 2-3 months at the most, because once I left there, I got into the real estate, front desk job. So I had no experience at selling anything. So it's funny, when I got the job as a car salesman, I remember telling my buddy who gave me the opportunity to go and work there. I'm like, listen, man, I thank you for having me here. Thank you for getting me the job, but I haven't sold anything. And this is really going to suck because I don't want to make you look bad. And if this doesn't go right, then my real estate career for sure is going to start to look very flaky and shady. And he's like, man, don't even worry about it. Don't even overthink it. Just go through the training courses that they make you go through, and you'll be fine. It's funny because at the time he's like, Kevin, when your car breaks down or when you get a flat tire, you at least know how to fix that stuff. He's like, I've never fixed a flat tire in my life, and I'm selling, 8 cars a month. So if you know what a car looks like and when something goes wrong, you know how to fix it, then believe me, brother, you're going to sell more cars than me.
He even sold you on the job.
But he always, I guess, took the amount of small faith I had, and he would always say, yeah, man, go for it. And I feel like people like that rub off sometimes when they're doers. You know what I mean? When it's
the dreamers and the thinkers. People who are good in sales usually make more money because the world runs really off of salesmen. You
Yeah.
can't make money if you can't sell yourself. Just like in video, you can't make money for videos for people if no one knows what you do. You know, you have to market yourself. You have to sell yourself. Um, the one thing that most people don't like is a shady salesman or an
Yeah,
aggressive salesman, somebody that says like, you know, shakes your hand and does not let it go until you take the
yeah,
flyer. Nobody likes
yep,
that.
yep.
But I'm sure you were sold on the idea of making more money and growing. But I don't know if you realize that in selling cars, you were learning the art of sales, which is
Yeah,
inevitably what you were going to use in real estate.
yeah, that was the biggest wake up call I had. It's almost like as I was selling cars, the idea of becoming a realtor, it was just becoming more and more obvious to me. So it's interesting when people think about selling, you can't necessarily sell anything to anyone. All you can really do is provide all the value and all the information of the things that they're looking at, and if the person is ready, they'll commit to the purchase. You can't tell someone, well, why aren't you buying it? That's kind of like that pushy part of things. But if someone's looking at a car and I can at least explain to you what the car offers, that's all I got to do. The thing is with nowadays is that people have so much information accessible to them online that 99% of the time before people ever actually buy anything, they've already done enough research to where they know when they're committing. And I feel like I learned that as I started getting into car sales because I didn't have to sell anybody on the car. They kind of already knew the car that they wanted.
Yeah.
I only went in there and brought all their research into reality.
One thing I want to say is that, and this is a really good skill for people to, or a tool for people to use to learn skills like you learned with the art of the sale. And there's 4 stages to it. It is, and I looked it up just to make sure I don't get it wrong. Unconscious incompetence. You're unaware that you don't have the skill and you lack the necessary tools to even develop it. Then you move into conscious incompetence. You now got the job as a car salesman and you are conscious of your incompetence. You literally
Mm-hmm.
have never sold anything before and you're like,
Yep.
guys, I need help. I need help selling some.
Yeah.
And now you move into number 3, which is conscious competence. As in, you know there's a lack in something. You don't know about cars. You don't know how to change a tire. But you now know that you have the skills to be able to sell. It just takes effort. And now the 4th stage that you move into is unconscious competence, as in you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to think about it. When somebody walks up, you're just wheeling and dealing. You know, it's
Yep.
your personality, it's who you've now become. You've changed into a completely different person
Mm-hmm.
because you've learned the skill of the sale and you don't even have to think about it. But those 4 steps, unconscious incompetence, conscious incompetence, conscious competence, and unconscious competence, is a tool that you can use to learn any skill. And it's
Agreed.
hard to not know about what you don't have in the first stage. So, how did you do in your performance as a salesman?
Funny enough, when I was going through the training course at the job, the training course was provided by Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone, I didn't mention these books in the beginning, but back in the stage of my life when I was reading, Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I had read The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, I had read a lot of Grant Cardone. I had specifically had listened to 10x, the 10x rule, and I had listened to Sell or Be Sold, which is what you were saying that really we live in a world where you're either doing the selling or you're being sold to. Doesn't matter where you go, where you drive, someone is selling you something. And if you're not doing any of the selling, it's because you're the one being sold to. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Grant Cardone also talked about the 4 quadrants that you were just mentioning. And he was the one that basically said, listen, at the end of the day, when you go through this course, when someone steps into a dealership, they're not trying to buy a house. They're not trying to buy food. They're not trying to buy technology. They're really looking at only one of 3 things, and that's a sedan, an SUV, or a truck. Period. Okay. So what you got? As soon as someone steps into a dealership, you ask them, "Are you looking for a sedan, truck, or SUV?" And then when they say, "Oh, I'm looking at an SUV," perfect. What kind? Grand Cherokee, Durango, and you start going through this. It's almost like a check. It's like a funnel, right? You ask these basic criteria question, and the person basically starts leading you to what exactly they want. Now, one of the things that I learned again as I was selling cars is that forget about the sales part of things, right? I feel like there's only a couple things that really helped me accelerate my growth when I was selling cars. And it's the part that people don't like to hear because it's the part that people don't like to do. Um, but it's situations like that that gives people like myself who are willing to put the time and the effort the opportunity to surpass everyone. So here's the thing: I wasn't good at sales. Period. It took me a while to figure out how to get people to tell me, well, what kind of sedan you want, what kind of SUV you want. But you know what I was doing? As soon as I got the job, I was there from morning to close. The dealership opened at 8 a.m. I was there at 7:50. The dealership closed at 9 p.m. I would leave at 9:30. Monday through Saturday, 6 months straight. Every single day. I was there. I was the first salesperson there every morning. I was the last salesperson to leave every single night, 6 days a week, 6 months straight. And because I was there all the time, guess what? That gave me the opportunity to talk to more people. The more people I spoke to, the better I got. It's almost like I was practicing on everybody that was coming in through the dealership. And the more I spoke to them, the more I realized, oh, I probably shouldn't say that. I should stop saying that. I should probably greet people different. The more I got out there and failed, the more I got out there and stumbled, the more I got out there and made mistakes, the better I got. But I got better much faster. What would have taken someone a year or 2 years to improve on, I did it within 6 months. Because if you think about it, if most car salesmen, right, they're working there from 9 to 5 or from 11 to 8, depending on your shift. So what does that mean? That means that naturally on them, I have, let's do the math, 8. I was working an extra 4 hours a day compared to the rest of my competitors. Now, granted, the competitors in my dealership, they're old men. They've all been selling cars for God knows how long. This is just a job to them. But to me, again, it's all about mindset. It's all about how you view the world. When I started working there, it wasn't just a job for me. It was my stepping stone to where I had to be, right? So to me, it was a quick and go. So let's do the math. And we're going to get into the sales part of things, but I feel like this is the most important. Because you can learn about sales all you want. You can read all the selling books you want. You can practice all the scripts you want. But if you're not going out there and actually talking to people and actually messing up, you're not going to get better, right?
Yeah, you almost sound like all the infomercials you see on, or I guess ads you see on social media that are saying, buy this book, it's for free, but you pay shipping, or listen, this is the number one secret to maximizing your growth in your business. Here's how to get tons of clients into your business. Here's the number one secret. And there's nothing new that has been created. The only stuff that changes is the person presenting it, and maybe presenting it in a new light.
Yeah,
It's almost like exactly what you just said. You get out there and you do the work. That's it.
you do it.
It's not
That's
about
that's
what
the
happens to you. It's about what you do with what happens
yeah,
to you.
and
It's
how
your
you
mindset.
respond to it. Yep. And that
Exactly.
right
So it's
there, it's is the craziest part where people ask me, and this when we get into real estate, I feel like it was more common when I got into real estate. Like, oh, what's the
mhm.
secret? What are you doing? What do you take? And it's like, no, man, I'm just spending the time that no one else wants to spend.
I was excited when you started talking about it, and I was waiting for you to say, "Here's the number one secret." And
Well, and
yeah.
I want to finish showing you the math on this because it's mind blowing. Now, granted, I was at that moment in my life, I was in a much more I had nothing, so my energy was 10 times stronger. Now, granted, let me put it for you like this. So I was working back at the time. I was working 4 extra hours a day compared to anyone else in the dealership, right? A day. So that's 4 hours. Now I was working 6 days a week. So 4 times 6, that's 24 hours a day. That means that no matter, even though I didn't know how to sell anything, I was instantly week one working 24 more hours than anyone else in the dealership. That's a whole day. That's a whole day without sleep. Now, let's fast forward. That's 24 extra hours a week that I'm working compared to everyone else in my dealership. Now let's multiply that by 4, since there's 4 weeks in a month. That's 96 hours. I was working an extra 96 hours compared to the rest of my competitors. So if I divide that by what? There's 24 hours in a day. That's an extra 4 days. Okay? I was
Yeah.
literally working an extra 4 days a month, every month. Now, let's get into the numbers. As I was saying, me getting better at selling cars was just really me understanding the inventory more, understanding the cars better, understanding what's actually out on the lot. Because the more I understood my inventory and the more I understood what I was selling, the easier it became for me to talk about it. Right? When someone steps into a dealership, they don't necessarily want to know about Kevin. They want to know about the car. But if I don't know anything about the car, how can I explain the car to them? How can they buy if I have nothing to share with them? So because I was working an extra 96 hours a month, what does that mean? I was exposing myself to the inventory more. I was exposing myself to more cars. I was exposing myself to more of the technology in the cars. I was exposing myself to more personalities and more people. And in the act of doing that, I got better. I was refined. I learned how to socialize, most importantly, build rapport. I got better at understanding how buying a car works and the financing part of things. I got to understand better the technology difference between a truck and an SUV and a four-door, right? And the thing is, again, it's not about selling, right? You're not selling anything to anyone. It's about, can you provide information to the questions that they have? And if you can provide this information to the questions that they have in the back of their head, the easier it'll be for them to make a decision. So if you can put them in a position to where it's easy for them to make a final decision on what they're doing, guess what? They're going to buy, right? So one of the things that I would do as soon as someone walked into the dealership, this is exactly how I sold cars. And granted, I never pushed anybody to buy anything. Whenever someone walked into the dealership, I'd go back to my training. Hey, are you guys looking for a specific car? Or what kind of car are you looking at? Truck, SUV, sedan? Oh, you're looking at a truck. Great. What specific model? A Ram or whatever other trucks we had at the time. They're like, oh, we want a Ram and we want this level right here. Cool, let's go take a look at it. I didn't say anything else. I just asked them what they're here to look at, and I brought them to the car because people want to see the car. They don't want to see me. They don't want to see my managers. They definitely don't want to spend time in the dealership. They want to go see the car. So first thing I ever did was take them to the car. And as soon as we sat in the car, I would ask them, wow, this is bringing back memories. As soon as they stepped into the car, I would ask them, hey, so have you guys driven one of these before, or is this your first time? They'll be like, oh, that's my first time. And I'd be like, great, do you want to test drive it? You see, a lot of people in the car sales industry, they do everything they can to avoid taking someone to test a car. In my mind, that's the first thing I'm going to offer you. Because the quicker I get you to test a car, the quicker you're going to know if you like it or not. And that's it, right? So as they would say, yeah, I'm interested in driving the car, I'd be like, great, let's take it for a spin. Didn't sell them on anything. And you just build rapport. Like, hey, what do you guys do for a living? Do you live here? Whatever, while you're driving around town. When they finish driving the car, I would ask them, like, hey, do you guys want to step? I never asked them, do you want to buy the car? As soon as we finished driving the car, and and they told me what they thought and if they liked it, then I would ask them, like, hey, would you guys be curious to know what your monthly payments would be if you actually bought this car? Tell me how that's not that question right there will get anybody to say yes. I'm not asking you to buy it. I'm not asking you to commit to it. I'm just saying, hey, if I provide you more information, would it make it easier for you to make a final decision on this car?
Essentially, what you learned was not just the art of sale, but asking the right questions. You learned the effort that you put in. You're putting in 90 plus hours over the course of a month, 4 hours every single day, and that volume that adds up to be quite a lot. So with that being said, I'm sure your sales were a whole lot higher than anybody else there.
Yeah.
But
So
what was the point of getting all of those sales? Because your end goal wasn't just to be a car salesman.
So the first month in the business, and I remember this to this day, I actually started work the day after my birthday. So it was October 11th. And that first month, from October 11th to October 31st, I sold about 6-7 cars, which was mind-blowing to the dealership that I worked in, because the average car salesperson, granted, people that have been doing this for years, they sell about 8 to 9 cars a month. My first month in, I sold 6 to 7 cars. Granted, I didn't do anything magic. All I did was literally what I told you I was doing. Now, the reason why, to me, I was willing to work an extra 4 hours a day, I was willing to work an extra 4 days a month, the reason why I pushed and I was there all the time was because that right there was going to lead to me doing real estate. You see, the act of selling cars and the act of saving up money was all to fuel my vehicle of getting into real estate.
So with you selling all the cars, and you now saving up a ton of money, and you had a plan to get back into real estate, what was that large amount of money going to be used for, and all the things that you built up?
Yes, great question. So, to be honest, when I got into selling cars, I thought I was going to do that for a year. I never intended for it to be a short term thing. The reason why I gave myself a year to work there was because statistically, when someone's new into the real estate industry, it doesn't matter how many people you know, it generally takes about 6 to 12 months to actually generate business. Let me put it into perspective. Just because I meet someone that wants to buy a house tomorrow doesn't mean they buy tomorrow. And even if they buy tomorrow, that doesn't mean I get paid tomorrow. From meeting a prospect to actually finding a house to actually selling a house and getting paid, that whole process takes anywhere between 3 to 4 months. Now, granted, that's if you know people, and that's if you already have a base going into the industry. So imagine you're in my shoes. You don't know anybody. You definitely don't have a single social bone in you to go sell anything. So instead of giving myself 3 4 months, I was giving myself a year. So the reason why I got into selling cars and what was running through my mind at the time of generating that money was I need to have enough money saved up for a year. Because when I dive into real estate, I don't plan to do it part time. I don't plan to go get another part-time job so I can do real estate on the side and hopefully it works. That was never a goal of mine. I always knew that when I did get into real estate, I was going to have to devote the same way that I was devoting all my time and energy into selling cars. I had to take that same exact energy into selling houses. Now, granted, 12 months of expenses is not a couple grand. 12 months of expenses, depending on where you live and depending on your expenses, you're going to need at least 30 to 40 grand. And again, I wasn't just trying to save up money for living expenses like car, insurance, food, rent. On top of that, I had to take into account business expenses, you know, like building a website, generating leads, keeping a database. Like none of that stuff is cheap. That costs hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars a month sometimes. So that's why I had all the energy and the drive to show up every single day to sell cars because essentially I needed to save up a whole year worth of money. Now, granted, because I was working an extra 4 hours a day and I was doing that consistently week by week, what should have taken me a whole year to do, what should have taken me a year to accomplish, I did it within 6 months. Right? It's kind of those. It's kind of like that saying, "Shoot for the stars, and if you land on the moon, you're good." Or if you start living life as if your 10-year plan is going to become your 5-year plan, you're more likely to achieve it within 5 years, right? But if you step into something thinking that it's going to take you 10 years to get there, guess what? It might actually take you 10 years to get there, So I was under the mentality of, I got to get this done as soon as possible, and it did. It worked. But life is just amazing that way. And so, long story short, my second month at selling cars, I started October 11th. So November 1st to November 30th, I had sold 13 cars, which at that point was already mind-blowing to a lot of people because I'm new. I haven't sold anything in my life, and this is barely my second month in the industry. Kevin should not be selling 13 cars. And again, it goes back to I was just willing to put myself out there. I was willing to show up. I was willing to work. I was willing to, whether I got paid or not, to me, it didn't matter. To me, it felt like every day I show up, I'm actually becoming a better version of myself.
Not to miss out on any of the other details, but I wanted to ask you, what is before you had left, because you said it was 6 months, before you had left, what was the highest number of cars you had sold in a singular month before you had, and I don't want to tell your story for you, but before you took everything and moved your entire life to somewhere else?
I remember my last month in selling cars, I took a picture of the amount of cars I sold that month.
While you're looking it up, I'll go ahead and tell the viewers, because I knew you at this time. You had actually moved across the lake, or basically about an hour away, to go do this thing, and you hadn't really talked to too many people because you were so focused in on what your mission was. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember you had actually sent me a photo, and it's probably the photo that you've just pulled up. If you want to send it
Yeah.
to me, I'll put it on the screen for everybody.
Okay.
But I remember the photo that you sent me of your sales versus everybody else, just as almost like you said a certain amount of pride in what you were doing. And
Yes.
healthy pride is tied to truth. I think pride devoid of truth is arrogance. So you had a healthy pride because of the amount that you had sold, and you are now proud of what you've accomplished.
It was 24 cars. 24 cars was the amount that I sold in 1 month. That was my last month selling cars. To put it into perspective, again, the average sales car person sells anywhere between 8 to 9 cars a month. I did 24. That's almost 3 times as much. And again, I'm not saying that I'm the biggest badass out there. I'm not saying that I'm the world's greatest salesperson. I'm not saying that I got it all figured out. I don't. I showed up. I was willing to learn. I was willing to fail. I believed in myself, and I believed in my dream. Like I
Yeah,
believed that no other reality was possible but for me to succeed.
and that's why I wanted to say that it was a healthy form of pride, is what you're saying, because it's tied to truth. It's hard to be humble and have humility in being great at something, because how do you tell people you're great at something without sounding, prideful or arrogant? Well, your actions speak louder than your words. And you hadn't talked to too many people. You were focused on what you were doing. And when you sent me that picture, it was a way of, you were proud of yourself, but you
Yeah,
still had a humility in that. So again, that's why I was saying, healthy pride is tied to truth. And
yeah.
what is it? Pride devoid of that truth is simply just arrogance.
hmm
But with you selling 24 cars and now getting out of being a car salesman and moving into real estate, what did you do?
I didn't even have a numerical amount. To be honest, I had just told myself I'm going to work for 12 months, and at the end of the 12th month, no matter how much money I got saved, I'm just jumping into real estate for a whole year. And but I already knew instantly in my first 2 months of selling cars how much money I was more likely to save up within a year, and that was if I stuck to selling 8 to 10 cars a month, right? So I was like, 12 months should be no problem.
Yeah.
Now, granted, at the time, I was um, I was planning to just exit the car sales and do real estate in Louisiana, right? That was my whole goal. But I guess as I was selling cars, I got to meet different people. I got to learn different things. Uh, One of my buddies at the time, he was kind of telling me like, hey, look, if you study all these markets around the country, these cities are more likely to do better than New Orleans, right? And New Orleans to me was always a sketchy place because, you know, hurricanes coming at any moment and the city getting inundated. For me at the time, it was like, whatever. What's the chances of that happening again? But it's not something that I liked. It's not something I was comfortable with. So as I started selling cars, one of my buddies at the time was like, "Hey, look, you look at the Colorado market, look at the Fort Lauderdale market, look at the Jacksonville market. They look like they're doing better, and they look like they're going to continue to develop better over time." And when I saw the Fort Lauderdale market, I was like, you know what? That actually looks kind of fun. At that moment, to me, it wasn't just a business decision anymore. To me, it felt like, what a great opportunity. I get to go live in Florida. I get to go live by the beach. I get to uh, put myself in a brand new environment where I don't know anybody. I don't have any family members. I feel like anybody who's young should take that opportunity because I feel like you learn so much about yourself when you just throw yourself out there. So I thought to myself, screw it. I'll go to Fort Lauderdale. What's the worst that can happen? Worst case scenario, I don't succeed and I come back to selling cars. They'd love to have me back. Why wouldn't they hire me, right? Worst case scenario, I still got my license and I can still always try to go work for a team. Why wouldn't they hire me? Now with the car sales background, I'm sure the teams that didn't want to turn me into an agent would have been more open to having me. So to me, it was kind of like, sure, why not? I got nothing to lose. Now, again, because I was selling, more than 20 cars a month, I started saving up extremely fast. Fast to the point to where 5 months into all of this, I basically was like, "Hey, I think I can, I think I can leave now." I don't. What's the point to keep waiting? I'm just gonna be prolonging my true dream. What as well leave now? And my buddy at the time, same guy that hooked me up with the car, who was kind of there throughout the whole beginning, who was kind of pushing me, was like, "Just do it, man. Why the heck are you even waiting? Go next month." And honestly, I was like, "You're right."
Were you just youthful and full of vigor? You packed all your things up and then literally just drove to Fort Lauderdale.
Literally, my last month of selling cars, which is the picture I just sent you, to me that was just like everything just felt like a sign from God. I feel like God had just parted the sea and was just letting me walk through it. I felt like I was finally
Almost.
getting to the promised land. You know, it was just so, I can't explain it. I can't explain it. You
Now,
know,
now let's move to you actually being in Fort Lauderdale and now trying to pursue your dream. At some
yeah,
point in that process, did you feel a sense of, I don't want to use the word ignorance, but I mean, many people are young and dumb and full of hopes and dreams, and rightfully so, and you should be full of hopes and dreams. But did you feel a sense of kind of those four stages we were saying before of unconscious incompetence and conscious incompetence, as in you knew that something was there, but you just wasn't sure, you weren't sure how to do it?
exactly, exactly. I felt like the financial part of things, the fact that I had money saved up, that provided security. You know, I feel like once I had the security taken care of, you know, I'm not gonna have to go worry about food or living. Once I had security taken care of, I knew the only thing that was stopping me from where I needed to be was experience. You know, because my brain at that time had just witnessed going from not selling how to sell a single car to breaking records and selling cars. It's like now that my mind and my consciousness had lived that and experienced that, it's like my mind told me, hey, if you can do it there with cars, you can absolutely do it there with houses.
So when you started, you had failed your real estate license twice. You've been told no. You've kind of had some setbacks. You went to selling cars. You now had some success. You've now, young and dumb, moved over to Fort Lauderdale to follow your dreams. And I'm sure it was very tough to get started, and you probably had some more setbacks. But I believe you had a mentor to help guide you in that season.
Yes, yes, I would say that my mentor in that season of my life definitely, I'd like to say, is what catapulted me to be where I am today. So I didn't know this at the
And
time, but when I was
how
selling
did you find him?
cars, I'll get into that. So when I was selling cars, I didn't know this, but I technically had a mentor. My general manager was my mentor, and it's like sometimes we're so quick to overlook the people that are older than us, kind of telling us what to do and what not to do, so we don't make the same mistakes. So in the car industry, I had that, but I guess it didn't sit out to me. I just thought, oh, that's their job. You know what I mean? So when I got out here, granted, I basically moved out here in my car, you know, because I sold all the piece of furniture I had because in my mind it didn't make sense to spend money to move furniture out here. That's not what I was trying to do out here. I was trying to build a business. So I sold everything I had. I threw all my clothes in the backseat of my car and I drove out here. When I drove out here, I got extremely lucky. I look back at this and I'm just like, God was with me in every single step of the way because there's just no way that I had all that luck at that stage in my life. It's just still mind blowing to me. So when I moved out here, I what I did was I went to apartments.com and I think I had found a studio that I could afford. But it's not like I called in advance to see if it was still available. None of that. I literally found it on my way to Florida. I'm gonna show up to this rental and I'm gonna see if I can get it. So when I show up to this rental, I went through a couple hiccups. You know, I wasn't from there. You know, I didn't have the best credit score because I hadn't financed anything in my life. I barely had a credit score, so it was kind of hard to get them to agree to let me rent the place for them. But I basically, luckily, you know, I told them, I'm like, look, if you want, I can pay the whole year in advance. You know, like I set myself up for that opportunity. I was like, look, I may not have the cleanest background, but I can pay the full year in advance if that's what worries you. And luckily, they gave me the rental on the spot. It was very nasty. I had to clean it for hours when I got it. But nonetheless, because I was in that specific location, that specific address, I knew I wanted to go back to the same brokerage that the teams that I worked for were in. You know, I wasn't trying to reinvent the wheel. It's like in my mind, I was like, well, I already worked or was exposed to two extremely successful real estate teams in New Orleans, and I know what brokerages they're in. So why don't I just go to that same brokerage? So I am more likely to get to their stage, right? So I Googled closest brokerage near the address that I just rented, and Keller Williams showed up. And Keller Williams, again, is very well known for coaching and training, right? And again, at the time, I didn't know those things. It was just chance.
Now,
That's how things unfolded.
did you just walk yourself into their place of business and just
Yeah.
look for a job?
So basically, you don't look for a job whenever you're a real estate agent. Whenever you're a real estate agent and you're licensed, you just pick a brokerage and they're happy to take you. Why? Because you're going to have to pay them monthly fees and desk fees and transaction fees. They don't care if you're good or bad, right? So I had called them up and I was telling them like, hey, I just moved out here. I'm interested in your brokerage. And they're kind of like, well, we don't really take people from, that are coming from out of state, that aren't from the area. And I was like, wow, that's surprising. I've never heard of that. At the same time, they're like, are you even licensed? And I guess I forgot to mention this, but when I was selling cars, the only day that I had off was Sundays. So every Sunday for 6 months straight, all I would do was take my real estate course for Florida. Luckily, the Florida exam, I passed it on my first shot because, damn, I failed the Louisiana time. I failed the Louisiana one 3 times. So I had all that information still stuck in me that luckily I passed the Florida one on the spot. And I did that while selling cars. Like I got licensed and everything while selling cars because, again, Sundays I just devoted it to real estate. So when I moved out here, I'm like, look, I have a really good background in selling cars that I can send you. I literally took my exam and passed it on my way out here just by doing it on Sundays for 6 months straight. And the guy was like, you know what? I kind of like you. I kind of like that you're willing to go out and do all these things, so I'm going to give you a shot. They accepted me in the brokerage. When I went to the brokerage, I would spend a lot of my time there, but I also did it because I didn't have a printer at home, and I needed Wi-Fi, so I spent a lot of time at the office for those reasons, not because I was trying to tell everybody what I'm doing. I just needed Wi-Fi and I needed paper, right? But luckily for me, because I had already worked for a real estate team for about a year in Louisiana, I knew what they did to generate business. And just like anything else, a dentist, just like anything else, in order for you to generate business, like if you take a dentist office, for example, what do you think is the most important person in that office? The dentist himself or the person that's causing all the clients to go in through the front door?
Well, in business, you would say it's the person generating the sales, but
exactly.
Tomato.
In hygiene, you say the dentist. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that I learned when I worked for those real estate teams, which was I knew how to get people through the front door, right? But granted, getting people through the front door is not that easily. You can have leads, meaning you can have contact information of people that maybe have thought about selling their home or have thought about buying a home. But that doesn't mean just because you call them up and say, hey, you got a house to sell, they're going to take you in. It doesn't work like that. It's a numbers game, right? I had to talk to hundreds of people every single day to hopefully run into someone that would say, yeah, I'm willing to meet with you and talk about selling or buying a house. So when I joined the brokerage, I was already good at generating business. And I was good at setting appointments with that business that I was generating. But that's about as far as I could get, because my skills when I got in front of those people sucked. Because I don't know anything about houses. I don't know what causes a house to sell. I don't know what adds value to a house. It goes back to knowledge, right? So I didn't have the tools to have proper conversations with these people. So one day, and this is how I met my coach, I don't know what it was. It was late in the day, and I think I was just complaining. I was really agitated because I had moved out here April 1st. So literally a month after I had finished selling all those cars from the picture I sent you. So that month, I remember that was April. So right around June or July, granted, that's all of April, all of May, all of June. Actually, it was 3 months. April, June, July. I had already been in Florida for 3 months, right? I hadn't sold anything, right? I had I had a place to live, great. I was generating leads, which is great. You can generate leads on social media. It's not that difficult. But, and I should say, I'm generating leads. I even got to the point to where I was getting people to meet with me. Like I was actually going to these people's houses, but no one would actually give me the chance to sell. No one would actually give me the chance to buy. So one day I just remember sitting in the office 3 months in, and I'm like, I don't think, for the first time ever, I put my head down. I was like, you know what? I'm starting to think this isn't for me. And luckily, the guy who I spoke to in the beginning, who was hesitant about letting me join the brokerage because I was so new, he heard me. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, he's like, I see you here every single day. I see you stay here for hours a day. How are you not selling houses? Right? And I'm
And were you
like,
talking to yourself, or were
I
you
was, I think someone made a comment about something
you started complaining?
and I just complained. I don't know. I must have been in a very emotional, tough, because I'm not naturally a complainer. Like for me to complain, I have to be in a very deep emotional place for me to bring that kind of energy out, right? So I
Yeah.
remember
So I
that
guess
day.
you were 3 months in, lonely, not making money, and then just working basically for nothing and spending money.
Exactly. And it's not like I have a family member or a best friend that lives with me. It was just me, myself, and God, at the time. And all I could think was, God, there's no way you brought me out here for this. There's no way you got me to sell cars successfully. There's no way that you helped me find a rental the first day I moved here. There's no way that I got hired by. There's just no way that I got this far to not succeed. It just
Yeah.
no
So
way this happened.
you're now talking to this guy, and I guess what is he
So
telling you?
so anyways, I was just complaining out loud. I was like, damn. I'm out here making all these calls. I'm out here going to all these appointments, and nobody wants to sign a contract with me. And suddenly, the guy is like, what do you mean nobody wants to sign a contract with you? I'm like, I'm serious. And I showed him, like, all my stuff because I was tracking all my conversations. I'm like, look, I got 125 people in my database. I got all these people that asked me to call them, and I'm going to these appointments, and I'm not getting anything. And this was the moment my life changed forever. And this is when my sales skills went from 10 to 100. He simply said,
Today's sponsor is America First Advertising. Looking to boost your business's visibility? Meet America First Advertising, your go-to solution for digital signage and space. With networks spanning from Baton Rouge to Mississippi, they offer 25 screens in each network. Those locations in high-traffic venues like Walmart, Subway, doctor's offices, restaurants, and gyms. So you can imagine your ad being seen over 1,350 times in a single week. Ready to start your advertising? You can visit americafirstadvertising.com, or you can give them a call at 985-615-2680. America Advertising, where your business comes first. I would definitely recommend using these guys. Their screens are literally all over. I can't go anywhere without seeing a screen. So it's highly likely if you're sitting at a restaurant for 30 minutes to an hour, you're gonna see your ad. If you're interested, americafirstadvertising.com, or you can give them a call at 985-615-2680.
I know why you're not getting contracts. I'm like, why is that? He's like, because I guarantee you, you're going in there and you're saying the wrong things. That's all he said. He's like, to be honest, Kevin, that's not even that bad. He's like, the fact that you're saying the wrong things, that can be changed. He's like, I'll teach you how to say the right things. And he's like, and you want to know why? Because I don't usually teach anybody, because realtors kind of suck. They come and go. They're never grateful. He's like, you know why I'm going to teach you? I'm like, why is that? He's like, because you're already doing the hard stuff. I'm like, really? I'm like, what's that? He's like, you're willing to make the calls and you're willing to show up and meet with strangers. He's like, you see this office? I got 800 realtors in this office. Not a single one likes to do any of those things. So the fact that you're doing it, I already know you're going to succeed. He's like, I just got to get you to change what you're saying in there, because obviously what you're saying is not working. He's like, am I right or am I wrong? Whatever you're saying when you're stepping into these people's houses is not leading them to want to sign anything with you, right? And I was like, yeah, I guess. And he's like, yeah, so I'm going to teach you how to say the right things. If you go in there and you say the right things and you ask the right questions, believe me, you'll get the right results. My man, when he said that to me and he took me in, a month later, I had 5 contracts. 5 contracts.
Wow.
Without a joke. Now, granted, I know that sounds beautiful and yeah, but contracts don't necessarily mean I'm getting paid. Contracts just mean
Yeah.
someone's giving me a shot to sell a house or giving me a chance to buy a house. Just because a house is listed for sale doesn't mean it sells, for one. And two, just because someone wants to buy a house doesn't mean that they ever actually find the one they want to buy, or doesn't mean they ever actually buy, right? But guess what? I got contracts. It wasn't something that I had. And you know why I started getting contracts? My scripts. My scripts changed.
So what is the thing that you were telling them before versus what you're now telling them? Like what is the difference?
So let's just say that the first time going in, I wasn't asking questions. It was all about, here's what I can do to sell your house. Look at me. The second, when I started meeting with him and I started going on those appointments, it was more about, well, why are you selling? Well, where are you moving to? And how long have you owned this house? And is there a price you'd like to get for it? Oh, really? And how'd you arrive to that number? Have you ever tried selling it before? You see, it's like a doctor, right? It's
It's
like,
it actually kind of sounds like doing a podcast. Many people want to start a podcast, and the first thing they think of is it's all about me. You know, they think I want to meet with people, or I just want my buddies to just shoot the breeze, and I want people to learn about me. But what most people don't understand is in a podcast, it's about your guests. It's
mm,
about the other people. And when you're
mhm,
selling something, and as you're describing, you were more focused about the other person. You wanted to know what their interests were, what their wants and needs were, and how you might be able to better fulfill them. So as soon as that person feels like you're listening to them and you're understanding, it's almost like they feel more trusting to then go with you as a salesman or really as a
exactly.
realtor.
Exactly. You nailed it, man. And it's crazy to think that that little thing alone is what finally led me to start getting contracts. Now, granted, again, it was also one of those things where it's like, oh, I got one script and I got better. No, I got the script and I kept doing what I was already doing. You know, I was waking up at 5 in the morning every single day, 6 days a week. That never left me when I left car sales. That stuck with me to when I got out here. And I would work from 5 in the morning to 8 p.m. at night.
I would like to say, having said that, I remember you saying you were lonely and you were used to that. You were kind of you knew the way, you know, you saw it in everything, so you were laser focused in that. But me, in my personality, I would still call you. So I remember you telling me, and many times you didn't answer the phone, but I remember telling me that, you know, you were waking up at 5 and you were doing all these things and you were dedicated and you were focused and this and this and this. You were pursuing your dreams. I can't remember all the conversations, but I remember actually seeing pictures of your schedule, and it was a very, I would say, tenacious
Yeah,
schedule. It was a
it
very
fell
busy
back. It
schedule.
fell back to that thing where I was talking about earlier, which was in car sales. I was willing to work an extra 4 hours a day, which added up to a certain amount of hours a week. The same thing applied here. I was working an extra 5 hours a day compared to the rest of my competitors selling real estate in South Florida. So guess what? After months of doing that, it starts to add up.
Now, since you got those 5 contracts, when did you actually start making money? From the time that you moved to Fort Lauderdale to the time you actually got your first check?
My first check was 7 months in. Um, 7 months in, and granted, that's luck because sometimes it doesn't take that quick. But it was 7 months in, and I was blessed because 3 months in, right around the time that I was kind of complaining in the office, someone like I guess someone that just admired what I was doing at that moment in my life said, Kevin, I kind of feel for you, and I see you're doing all the work, so I'm gonna hook you up with like a rental. I think I made. I think he said, hey, my best friend needs to rent that house. Can you just do the paperwork for me, and I'll help you out? I think I made $500, but I mean $500 isn't really nothing, not even back then. But my true check in the thousands was in October, ironically right around my birthday, which was almost the same exact time I had switched jobs to selling cars uh, a year before. So I always started seeing these patterns in my life with certain dates and stuff. But in October, I sold one house. So I met with my mentor at the time. I had met him around June, July. So granted, like I said, I took a couple contracts a month later, but my true closing occurred almost 3 months after that, which was in October. And it's crazy because that was one house. The next month, I sold 2 houses. The next month, it was 4. Then the next month, it was 8. And ever since that, I've been selling houses every single month ever since that. Now, as far as my lonely part of it goes, yes, I was, you could say I was lonely because I wasn't socializing, but I always felt, I'm always heavy into prayer. So I always felt like my morning prayers at that moment in my life provided a lot for me. It felt like I wasn't alone. It felt like someone was by my side, watching over me, making sure I do the right things. I felt like I had a best friend, right?
Now, I said lonely maybe once or twice, but I don't mean to say it in any negative context because
Mm-hmm.
many people want to be leaders, but they can never be followers first.
Mm-hmm.
And you must be a follower of something before you can ever be a leader. You have to study to show yourself approved. You have to put in the work, because people will see right through you if you're not doing it. But in the same time, many successful people and many leaders do end up having a form of loneliness because the more you grow, the more responsibility you have, the smaller your circle gets.
Yeah,
And when your circle gets smaller, there's not that many people that can relate to you. When you're the
agreed.
top dog, there's really not that many people that can relate to your story or your work ethic or what you're into or what you're doing. And like we said at the beginning of this, no one cares,
Yeah,
you know?
agreed.
At the end of the day, no one cares. So when you found your purpose or when you found that thing that gets you up at 5 o'clock in the morning, it's it's hard not to do it. It's almost like if you don't do it, you can't ever
I'm
find
not
out
alive.
what yeah, you can't find out what God had in store for you. But with that, we are starting to get towards the end of the podcast. But I did want to say, throughout this entire story, it's extremely motivational because where many people might have a relative that's, ready to sell a home so they get their real estate license and they might make some good money. Your story is literally a testament of, rags to riches. It's having nothing and literally putting in the work, doing the things no one else wants to do. My dad always told me, being a man is not doing what you want to do, it's doing what you have to do. And it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a matter of just saying, I would like to do this thing. It was a
Mm-hmm.
matter of, I have to do this thing. I feel compelled and driven towards this, and I feel led to do this. I don't know where it's coming from. I just have to do this thing. And you literally got up, nothing but the clothes on your back and the stuff in your car, headed out, to a different state to pursue your passion and to pursue your dreams. So for me, it's very inspiring in whatever endeavor that I would embark upon, or whoever listens to this, especially if they're in real estate or car sales.
Right.
But this could apply to literally anyone's story as a testament of just perseverance. But with that being said, where are you now with your journey?
Yeah, I'll give you a little cliff note, and then I guess next time, if we do this again, I'll get into the little detail as to how I went from selling 2 houses a day to where I am now. Right. So
Mhm.
now, I work with my sister. So my sister actually joined me. I want to say almost a year after I had moved out here. So my sister and I basically run the real estate business now. I kind of call all the shots about what we got to do, but she helps me administratively, get things moving. I have 2 agents under my team, so now I'm at a point where I generate enough business that whenever I feel like my schedule is getting very tight and it's difficult for me to handle new clients, I hand them off. So I act like a broker, and if you look at it on paper, I'm laid out like a broker, but I'm not. I'm a team owner. My broker is a completely different entity, and they protect me more on legal side of things. So say if I were to be sued, well, technically you're suing the broker, not me, right? So I always wanted to keep that separate. I do have a full-time caller that I hire. I pay them, monthly salary. And what they do now is they do a lot of the calls that I would make when I first moved out here to generate business. Now they do them for me because now my time is more spent on staying in touch with people that already know me and working with clients that are already on the table. So for example, nowadays we're selling. we sell or rent anywhere between 4 to 5 homes consistently every single month. I'm invested in real estate now. I own properties here in Florida. I own properties in Louisiana. And now my goal, which is really my true dream, which was the only reason why I actually got into real estate the first time, my true goal is to continue to build an investment portfolio. You see, because in my mind, when I think about success, I think about success in a way where I have enough residual income coming in to where money comes in without me having to work for it. You see, everything my whole life up to this point, as far as the story that we've talked about, it was always me having to work for something. It was always me showing up to make things happen because obviously no one's going to do it for me because no one cares, right? So what does that mean? Now I'm building a life to where my real estate business has now led me to actually get in the game and start investing in it. And in the act of doing that, which is where my main focus is going to be over the next few years, my goal is just to buy at least one real estate property a year, so that right now at 27, I'm going to be 28 next month, so that 20 years from now, when I'm 47, guess what? Now all the investments not only pay for me, but for my family, my people around me, so if my mom gets too old, it doesn't matter. Money's coming in for her to be taken care of. If I ever have a family in an emergency, hey, don't worry about it. Like, money shouldn't be a problem for anybody, really. And I feel like that's where this whole journey has brought me. For example, last year I had the blessing to buy a house for my mom. My mom's never owned a house here, so that was pretty big. Just a couple months ago, we invested in a rental property near where she lives. Which is crazy because growing up, when I lived with my mom, she always paid rent. We've been paying rent for as long as I can remember. So to finally get to a point to where now she gets to collect the rent, it's, what can I say? I always felt like God
Now
always had this in store.
But you literally have the American dream and literally just chased after it with all your heart and put the work and effort in to essentially achieving that thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like rags to riches times 10,
Well, once you've, I guess, achieved some more free time with what you do, I guess what do you plan on doing and spending that time?
So now I guess you remember how you said I put all my eggs in one basket when I first moved out here to do real estate. I did, and that was my only. It was a true obsession, and it's all about
Yeah.
obsession. And I'd like to think that real estate still is not the same as it used to be. It was my obsession at the time. Now I spend my time diversifying, not putting all the eggs in one basket, but diversifying. Real estate now is my vehicle. I like to see real estate now as my little car that's going to take me to anywhere I want to be. Not only for myself, but the people around me, right? Because like you said it yourself, the more you succeed and the further you start to get in life, the lonelier it gets because it's not like you have people that can relate to you. And if you think you found someone that can relate to you, they're usually just jealous on the inside because they don't have what you have at the age that you have. So it's always these weird fine lines of navigating social circles. So to me, that's why whoever is around me, the people that stay around me, or the people that are willing to stay around me, are the most important because that's all I have. Like, who wants to be the wealthiest person that's alone, right? That doesn't sound like wealth to me. That sounds like loneliness, right? But I'm diversified, whether it's in crypto or stocks. Like I said, I do own multiple real estate investments. Also, in CDs or just
Yeah.
the
Well,
sky is the limit. 5 years, 6 years ago, my goal was, dang, I got to learn how to sell a house, but no one's willing to let me sell a house. And nowadays it's more like, okay, now houses are getting sold, but that to me has become what you said in the quadrants. What was it? Unconscious competence.
yeah, that's it. Unconscious comments.
Now it's just a side thing. I do it every day. It's just a discipline. I don't want to do it every day. It's not like every day I show up and like, yeah, I want to talk to 100 people today. No, that's not the case. But I have the discipline to do it because eventually
Yeah.
the act of that is what continues to create a limitless sky.
Well, your story excites me, and I'm getting excited now that I've kind of gotten through the whole thing, and I think it's going to excite a ton of people as well. But to kind of wrap things up and finish things off, what would you tell other people in their endeavors or their pursuit of success, whatever that might be?
It's one of those things where if you know deep down inside your heart, there's something you want to go after, there's something you want to achieve, whether that's financially or um, vocationally or physically, whatever it is, if you know deep down inside your heart that that's what you want to do, you should be obsessed with it, but in a healthy type of way. You almost have to be obsessed with it in a way where you have to tell yourself, you know what, this is what God wants me to do. Everything in life has led me to have this desire, to pursue this desire. And as long as I believe I can achieve it, and as long as I actually put in the effort to achieve it, God shows up. Life shows up and actually meets you there. So to me, it's all about, and it sounds cliche, but it's really true. Don't give up on yourself. And most importantly, if it's true and you truly believe that you're not going to give up on yourself, make sure your actions back it up. And do it whether you're seeing results or not. Do it. Whether you're getting paid or not, do it. Because if you do it over a long period of time, the results will come. When I was at the front desk at the real estate company and I tried to move up, and everything that they did was for me to not move up, I could have been satisfied with that and I could have stayed there. And I would still be working under them today. But guess what? I didn't give up on myself. I knew I could do more. I went to selling cars. And I didn't tell you this part, but when I was selling cars and I told the dealership that I was leaving, they almost fired me on the spot. They said, oh, you're going to leave in 2 months. You might as well leave now. And I was like, wait a minute. I'm just giving you guys a heads up so that you can look for someone until I leave. They also said, I don't know why you're getting into real estate, man. We've all tried real estate here in this dealership, and you don't want to deal with checks every 6 months. You might as well stay selling cars. I could have stopped there. I could have stopped chasing my dream and just fell in love with the checks that were consistent every month. But guess what? I kept going. And then when I got out here, still, I was putting in the effort. I was so this close to quitting real estate when the right person at the right moment just said, oh, I think I know what your issue is. I can help you out. It's like you should never stop. If you truly know what your goal is and you truly believe that if you're going to put in the effort to get there, keep going. Whether you see the results or not, you keep freaking going. Just like you're going to keep making these podcasts. You're going to keep interviewing people. Whether it leads to something great or not, it doesn't matter. You're going to keep doing it day over day, night after night, month after month, year after year. And before next thing you know it, it might not happen in your time frame or exactly as you expected. But before you know it, it'll blow up. It's like, and I'll finish with this. It's like that meme where it's two guys both digging for gold, and one guy got tired of digging and walks out, and the other guy just needs to hit it one more time and the gold is there. What I'm saying is, don't be the guy that walks out or that stops chasing what you're chasing, because for all you know, you could have been right there.
Man, that is absolutely awesome. And like I said, I'm fired up and I'm excited. I'm looking forward to tomorrow already. And I know just from I'm sure of you saying this, you're probably fired up yourself.
Man,
but again,
makes me want to get up at 5. I haven't gotten up at 5 in a long time.
But I wanted to thank you for being on the podcast, because one thing I always say is that if I don't find my guests interesting, then the viewer won't either. And this story has been absolutely great, and I couldn't thank you enough. So with that being said, thank you, Kevin, for being on the podcast, and go ahead and close it right here.
Thanks, man. Can't wait till the next one.